think the news in the last 4 or 5 days about players and coaches has been centered on three people who have been put on the COVID list. Two starting quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions, Gardner Minshew of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Super Bowl champion head coach Doug Peterson of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I bring up these three people because as we sit here today and we start to think about what football is really going to be like in 2020, I think it is a pipe dream to think that when we get closer to the regular season, that the positive tests are going to stop it rather. And I just don't think that's the case. I think the positive tests are going to continue because the NFL, as everybody knows, has chosen to not go in a bubble. I think a bubble, by the way, is just impossible for the NFL. You can't ask 180 people per team to say goodbye to their families for 5 months. And again, I'm not saying that it isn't possible. I'm saying that I think it would be impractical because so many players, probably 4 or 5 times the amount who have opted out, would choose to opt out, including some very wealthy players, and I would assume some quarterbacks. So we're not going to have that same kind of bubble situation. But I bring up Stafford. Let's talk about the players first. Stafford and Gardner Minshew. Very interesting what the Detroit Lions announced on Tuesday afternoon. And I'm going to read 3 sentences from the Detroit Lions release. Today, we removed Matthew Stafford from the COVID IR list and onto the active roster. As a result of a false positive test result, he was forced, due to NFLPA protocols, to sit out until he received 2 negative tests. His testing sequence for the pre-entry period was negative, negative, false positive. Then the next 3 tests were all negative. And anyway, you could tell in reading this release from the Detroit Lions, there was a little bit of an edge to it. Like, our guy never really tested positive. He was a victim of a false positive. And if you do test positive, then you have to get 2 spaced out negative tests before you're allowed to come back. So, and Gardner Minshew, evidently, although this was not announced by the Jaguars, he has returned from the part of the COVID IR program, the reserve COVID list, that basically says if you, for 15 minutes or more, are within 6 feet of someone who tests positive, then you have to also, basically be sequestered until you test negative twice for COVID-19. And the only reason I bring these things up is because this is what I believe is going to happen once the season starts. Quarterback X in the, lead up to a big game is going to be told, by the way, we've got you for a positive test. And even if he has had 0 positives the whole year, and, he doesn't think there's any way he could have really tested positive, he is going to be sidelined until he tests negative twice for it. We'd be fools, honestly, to think that this couldn't and probably won't happen during the regular season. So I have written this. I started writing about this in May. I just need you to prepare for an imperfect season, for a season that essentially is going to have a lot of unfair things happening to a team. Imagine if this happened in the first week of the regular season. Lions, Bears, and Matthew Stafford can't play. It might. Imagine this happens to the Bucs before they play the New Orleans Saints, and Tom Brady's got to go sit out. And so these are the things that are going to cause everybody to go bat crap, but you just have to get used to because they will happen. Now, Doug Peterson, he's a different story. He is asymptomatic, but he tested positive. And even if you're asymptomatic and you test positive, you have to be taken out, away from any team activity. And then you have to test negative twice and you're out for a while. The point about Doug Peterson is just imagine he may have a very young play caller this year, Press Taylor. We don't know what will happen if he doesn't call the plays, but it could be his former quarterback coach, Press Taylor. He's a very promising coach, but these are the things that we have to get used to for the 2020 season if there's going to be a 2020 season. This is not just going to be something where, you got to worry about the opt-outs. You have to worry every week that there are going to be stories just like the ones we've seen this week.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.